Welcome to a special virtual edition of the Skeptics track at Dragoncon, where we put the science in science fiction.
Hi there, and welcome to the Skeptic Track live streaming video. We've got David Miano here to talk to us about the Great Pyramids of Giza, separating facts from fiction. David Miano is a historian of ancient times, and we are absolutely delighted to have him here. I believe we have him. Is he available? There he is. Hello, David. Welcome.
Hi, everybody.
So, tell us about ancient times.
Well, yes, thanks for having me. I appreciate being on the Skeptics tracks this year, and it's very hospitable of you. Anyway, we're going to talk about some outlandish ideas, I guess, that you might have seen abounding on the internet about the pyramids, especially. And I'm sure everyone is well aware of this, but the Great Pyramid in particular, but the pyramids of Giza especially, are the subject of many articles on websites and videos, both credible and incredible, and all sorts of fascinating theories. And they don't often comport with what we are taught in school. What Egyptologists say, what academics say, that the pyramids were constructed for are as tombs for the kings of Egypt, right? But there are many people who don't believe this, and they say that's wrong. They have other ideas, and these alternative ideas are numerous, but there are some very popular ones. Many of them are based on books that were written, over 100 years ago or in the 20th century, but some go even further back than that. So we're going to talk about some of the ideas that you might see crop up from time to time. So let's go to our next slide. The first claim I want to talk about is that the pyramids were storehouses for grain. Maybe you've heard that one. That gets mentioned from time to time. And in particular, in reference to the biblical story of Joseph, who is said to have been Pharaoh's right-hand man. And this idea goes back to around the year 500, when the Roman writer Julius Honorius wrote his book, the Cosmographia. And in it, he says that these pyramids on Giza Plateau were storehouses of Joseph. So he actually says that they were called the storehouses of Joseph. So that indicates that there was a current belief among people, not just him, but he doesn't elaborate any further than that. And then we get a reference in Gregory the Bishop of Tours, who wrote the famous book, The History of the Franks, not long after that, in the late 6th century. And he describes the pyramids, and he says this, I quote, "They are wide at the base and narrow at the top, in order that the wheat might be cast into them through a tiny opening, and these granaries are to be seen to the present day." Speaking of a tiny opening up there, he clearly had never seen the pyramids before, because there is no opening, but that's what he wrote. And then if you go to St. Mark's Cathedral in Venice, you'll find a series of murals there dating back to about 1204, and they depict scenes from the biblical book of Genesis, and that's what you see on the slide there on the right. One of the images shows Joseph with the 3 pyramids of Giza in the background, and they have holes in them, which apparently that was for putting the grain in. The assumption reflected in the image is that the pyramids acted as granaries in the time of Joseph. We'll talk later about what the pyramids are actually for. I think you already know what I'm going to say, that the academics are right, but we're going to go through all of the different theories first, okay? So you can go to the next slide. So another theory out there was, we trace this back to Ignatius Loyola Donnelly. He was a congressman from Minnesota, and he was obsessed with Atlantis, and he published a book that he called a history book in 1882, and it was called Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. Now, what theories did he have in this book? Well, one, that there once existed in the Atlantic Ocean, opposite the mouth of the Mediterranean Sea, a very large island, which was the remnant of an Atlantic continent, Atlantis, okay? And he says that the description of the island given in Plato is not a fable or made up, but it is veritable history. And he says that Atlantis was the region where humans first arose from a state of barbarism to civilization. And he says that even the implements of the Bronze Age of Europe were derived from Atlantis, and also that the Atlanteans were the first to manufacture iron. And he says that the Atlanteans established colonies all over the world, and that the oldest of these colonies was probably Egypt. And he says that Egypt probably is the most accurate reproduction of what Atlantis looked like. All right? As you know, obviously there is no evidence for this claim. It's kind of surprising that this idea is still around. It persists among many true believers today. But there's a lot of evidence to the contrary. All right. First of all, I'm going to briefly say this because I don't have time to get into all the refutations. But he looked at all the pyramids around the world, and this is still an argument people use today. He looked at all the pyramids around the world, and he says, look, everybody has pyramids. That must mean that they were all created by the same people, or they were taught to create these pyramids by the same people, and that's why we have all these pyramids. The problem with that way of thinking is there are a lot of things that cultures around the world have. You know, they all have buckets, you know, to hold water. You know, they all have, you know, brick buildings. Okay, you might say, wow, look at, they all have bricks. Isn't that amazing? You know, but it's not that amazing, and especially when you think about the fact that the pyramids are not really all that alike either. The pyramids in the New World have stairs ascending their faces. The Egyptian pyramids don't. The New World pyramids served as platforms for temples, but Egyptian pyramids didn't. Okay, they're truncated at the top in the New World, but in Egypt they are not. I mean, so there's a lot of differences between them. But anyway, there are also the main differences. They were built at very different times, like thousands of years apart. So, but still, you'll hear people talking about it. All right. Last year, there were, actually, was it 2 years ago? It's maybe 2 years ago now. There were two German nationals, Dominik Gerlitz and Stefan Erdmann, who were arrested for vandalizing the Great Pyramid because they were trying to take samples of a piece of graffiti and try to prove that the graffiti, which was apparently put there by some workers during the time of King Khufu, they wanted to show that it was a fake. But they weren't allowed to do it. And but yeah, so this is the common thing, though. The people with these theories accuse mainstream archaeologists of trying to cover up, or at least willfully ignore, the evidence pointing to the non-Egyptian origins of the pyramids. But we do have a good idea when the pyramids were built. So, yeah, them wanting to place it further back in time doesn't work. All the pottery that you're going to find at Giza looks is like the pottery that you're going to find in the time of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure of the 4th dynasty. There have been several rounds of carbon dating that have been conducted on the materials in the Giza periods, showing they come from the mid-3rd millennium BCE. So, yeah, you can't date them thousands of years earlier based on all of this evidence. But whether you believe in Plato's story that there was an Atlantis, okay, you might say, you know, it didn't just spring up from his very fertile imagination. His description of Atlantis doesn't match the descriptions of Atlantis that Donnelly or anyone else has given. So if you're going to believe him, then believe him. If you're not going to believe him, then don't believe him. But yeah, anyway, there was an elaborate Atlantis pyramid hoax that was perpetrated by Charles Berlitz in his 1978 book, Without a Trace. It was a follow-up to his earlier book on the Bermuda Triangle, which actually sold a lot better. But he presented sonar tracings of the Atlantic Ocean floor near the island of Bimini as evidence of a giant sunken pyramid. But the sonar chart, which apparently was authenticated by this Dr. Valentine of the Miami Museum of Science, even though it looks like it might be impressive proof, actually turned out to be a hoax. So, yeah. Anyway, did Berlitz genuinely believe there was a pyramid there? I don't know. Maybe he just maybe he was a cynic and he was just intentionally twisting the facts, or maybe he just didn't understand everything. But yeah, the legends of the Bermuda Triangle, Atlantis, and the pyramids are very complementary, and a lot of people use them together. So sometimes they can't be separated when you're talking about these theories. All right, let's go to the next slide. Oh, that was on the previous slide. Sorry, that was his sonar map there on the upper right, and the bottom is the graffiti from the Khufu pyramid. So you know. All right, now yes, go on to the next one. The pyramids as a record of human history. Now, the famed psychic Edward Casey that you see on the left, okay, he thought that the pyramids were built by a consortium of Atlanteans, Egyptians, and Caucasians from Russia. And he claimed that the ancients used their extraordinary mental powers to lift the massive blocks of the pyramids into place. He said that the Atlanteans levitated the stones during construction, but also that they recorded the whole of human history, past and future, within the pyramid. And he even said that it projected the date for the second coming of Christ. Yeah, now you might say that is so wacky. How could, people don't believe that today, do they? The idea that there is records of all of human history in the pyramids is not generally believed anymore because they've never been found. But the idea of levitation, that's still around, alive and well. Yeah. According to the authors of the book Pyramid Energy, this came out in 1987. You can see it up there. There's right below it, there's this picture of what's called the caduceus coil. And that's what they claim was used, that's the technology that they say was used to levitate the stone blocks that were used to build the pyramids. They built pathways flanked by sphinxes, rows of them. And apparently there was a solitron field spiraled that was powered by these coil generators, and the priest used the tuned coils, which their evidence for that is the jed pillars that are seen in Egyptian art. These are just symbols, but they thought they were actual coils. And they recreated basically the entire system that was used to levitate the stone blocks. Yeah, so this is recent. This is not Edward Casey here. You may think, well, that was back in the 80s, the 80s. But in the late 90s, there's another author, Andrew Collins, who came out with the book Gods of Eden, Egypt's Lost Legacy and the Genesis of Civilization. And he cites a 10th century Arab historian who recorded a folk tale about the origin of the Great Pyramid. And according to the story, these inscribed magical papyri were inserted beneath the stone blocks used in the construction. And then they were struck with a rod or a stave, and somehow that induced the stones to rise. Now, Collins doesn't take the story wholesale, but he says it is based on actual historical reality, and that indeed, well, let me read to you what he says. By striking the stones, the ancient Egyptians were able to set up some kind of sustained sound vibration that enabled the building blocks to defy gravity and move over the ground for a distance of around 86.5 meters before they would have to be struck again to achieve the same result. After producing an initial thrust, they would have been able to take advantage of Newton's first law of motion. So, yeah. You will still see on YouTube acoustic levitation theories about the blocks of the pyramids. So this is not old stuff. This is still, you'll still find it out there. Yeah. All right, you can go to the next slide. The pyramids are water pumps. In 1962, a book came out called Pharaoh's Pump by a man named Edward Kunkel. And he put forth the theory that the Great Pyramid was, in its entirety, a water pump. He speaks of water canals and how great masses of stone traveled through the networks that were built. Yeah. Now, when people point out that the shafts that he says were there aren't there, he just says that the excavators haven't found them yet. So, more recently, there was a fellow named Stephen Myers. You can see that up there too. The Great pyramid prosperity machine. And he's currently accepting donations to do the research on this Great Pyramid as a power pump if you want to donate your money. Yeah. Anyway, he says that the ancient pumping technology was non-polluting and doesn't require fossil fuels or electricity to operate. It's a better system than anything we've got today. Yeah, and you can see a little diagram of it there. All right, let's go to the next one. Have you heard of Graham Hancock? I'm sure you have. Yes. In his book Heaven's Mirror, came out in 1998, he argued that the Egyptian pyramids were Meridian machines, which means they were devices that were used to monitor the movements of the belt stars of Orion as they move up and down in the night sky over thousands of years. And that's the key point here, thousands of years. They were deliberately designed to monitor this, knowing that it would take thousands of years. The shafts, the air shafts, they're sometimes called air shafts, of the Great Pyramid, he says they're oriented towards Orion, Sirius, Alpha Draconis, and Cove, but not today. This was back in 10,500 BC. In fact, that's how he dates the pyramid. He's like, well, because it only lines up to those places in 10,500 BC, then that's when it must be from. Okay. So yeah, Orion pretty much was the Mount Olympus of ancient Egypt, he says, and that's where the pharaoh would travel in a boat after his death. And there's some truth in the Egyptian records about the pharaoh believed to be going up into the stars. Yes, okay. But the idea that the pyramid was deliberately lined up that way, well, since it doesn't work in ancient Egyptian times or now. And you could always find a time that it lines up. You just look for a time where it lines up, right? We don't. Scholars today don't accept this theory because it's almost like you're fitting the evidence to fit your theory rather than the other way around. Yeah. He also says that the three pyramids of Giza form a representation of Orion's belt, the three stars in Orion's belt, but not in 2500 BCE when it was made, but rather in 10,500 BCE. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, that's Graham Hancock. All right. Let's go to Christopher Dunn on the next slide. Very popular engineer who wrote a book called The Giza Power Plant. And Christopher Dunn claims that the Great Pyramid of Giza responded harmonically with the seismic energy contained within the Earth, and that the Great Pyramid became a coupled oscillator and drew energy through it and converted it to electromagnetic energy through the sophisticated use of acoustics and quartz-bearing rock.
Well, it sounds sciencey.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff, especially the more recent stuff, tries to sound very sciencey. Okay, what did the Egyptians use this great power plant for? Among other things, he says they used it for, yes, you guessed it, levitation. Yeah. Now, confirmation bias basically has allowed him to see evidence for this everywhere. Since this book, he has since gone around looking for more evidence of ancient technology, and he's a very big name in the lost ancient high technology business. But yeah, so that's the Giza power plant. Okay, you'll see that around too. In fact, I made a video responding to a YouTube video which purported, which claimed that the Great Pyramid was a power plant, and that video has gained millions. Not my video. My video has gained a couple of thousand, but this other video that claims that the power plant has gained millions of views. Yes, it's a big business on YouTube. This lost ancient high technology. All right, let's go to the next one. And this is where we get to ancient aliens. So far, nothing I've said is about ancient aliens, but now you'll see that as well. If the ancient Egyptians couldn't have built the pyramids, or the Atlanteans couldn't have built them, then maybe an extraterrestrial race could have done so. And there's all kinds of books that have come out on this. The first big one was The Morning of the Magicians by Louis Powell and Jacques Bergier. That came out in 1964. A more famous one, I'm sure you've heard of, is Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods. You may have heard of Zecharia Sitchin as well. He's written, actually, von Daniken and Sitchin have written a lot of books, but The Stairway to Heaven is the one about the pyramids that Sitchin did. Graham Hancock, besides the Meridian machine, one I'm telling you about, he did one called The Mars Mystery, the connection between Earth and the Red Planet, where he brings in ancient aliens. In 1999, one called Gods of the New Millennium, Scientific Proof of Flesh and Blood Gods by Alan Alford came out. So yeah, all of these argue that a greater intelligence from other worlds built the pyramids. Many of the authors that I listed agree with von Daniken, who wrote, "If we meekly accept the neat package of knowledge that the Egyptologists serve up to us, ancient Egypt appears suddenly and without transition with a fantastic ready-made civilization." So one of the arguments is that such a great civilization couldn't have popped up so fast. Well, he obviously hasn't studied the prehistory of Egypt, because it was gradual. Okay, they did have a gradual development of civilization. It didn't just pop up suddenly. So yeah. But you'll also hear the claim made, von Daniken makes it, many make it, and that is, people today couldn't make something as great as the Great Pyramid, so how could the Egyptians have done it? But the thing is, the Great Pyramid could be made today. There's nothing unusual about that, and the ancient Egyptians could also have made it. It's been demonstrated so. But people keep repeating this. You'll see it even now. People, they couldn't have done it. They couldn't have done it. It's always playing down the abilities of the ancient people. They were primitive. They were stupid. They were ignorant. They couldn't do it. But that isn't true. Yes. Pyramid enthusiasts have often divined very remarkable mathematical formulas from the monuments, especially the Great Pyramid, in an effort to show that the Egyptians couldn't have done it. So, for example, Graham Hancock claims that the Great Pyramid incorporates pi into it. Actually, it does to a certain extent, and the Egyptians actually had pi, so there's nothing unusual about that. But there are many mathematical formulas that they've come up with that say this is just, they couldn't. Maybe you've heard one about the speed of light being actually recorded in the measurements of the Great Pyramid. But the problem with that is the speed of light, according to, I think it's done. They claim is it the miles per second, or is the meters, the kilometers per second? I can't remember which system it was, but miles or kilometers. That's a recent measurement. It's not a measurement that existed in ancient times, and the Egyptians would never even have known about it, right? So how is that even significant? But you can find, mathematicians will tell you this, you can often find many mathematical formulas and things that it's just a coincidence. Yeah. All right. And then next one, and this is the last one before I'm going to give you the solid evidence for what the pyramids are for. That would be pyramid power. This became very popular in the 1970s especially. It goes back to a French researcher, André Bovy, in the 50s, I believe. Maybe it's even earlier than that now that I think about it. But he made a replica of the Great Pyramid, and he put raw meat inside of it to see if it rotted. And he says that it didn't rot. Okay? Which proved that somehow the way that the Great Pyramid was shaped, okay, or formed, or something about it, was special. Okay? There was a Czech radio engineer who in the late 1950s built a cardboard pyramid and claimed that it sharpened his razor blades, and he was granted a patent for this. But anyway, that's kind of the beginnings of the pyramid power thing. In the 1970s, there were no limits to what pyramids could accomplish. People were saying it not only could sharpen your cutlery, but it could age wine, it could remove the bitterness from coffee, it could preserve foods, it could purify tap water, it could strengthen your TV reception, reduce pain. and it could assist in meditation, things like that. That stuff has kind of fallen by the wayside, but it was really big for a while. All right. With all of that in mind, I'm sure you skeptics out there are like, yeah, that doesn't really ring true to me. But people sometimes don't know. You often see that when you look at some of the ancient aliens material out there, or the lost ancient high technology Atlantis material out there. They don't even know why Egyptologists think the pyramids are tombs. And so they'll make claims about it like, there's no evidence that they're tombs and things like that. There is, however, evidence that they're tombs. And so hopefully I'm helping out, putting this into the public consciousness that, we do know why they're tombs, and here are the reasons. So I'm going to give you the reasons why they're tombs, and hopefully provide an antidote to some of the misinformation that's out there. Okay. So let me summarize the evidence. Let's go to the next slide. Evidence that the pyramids are tombs. Point number 1. Okay. This is a clincher right here. Okay. This is like, you could just end it right here, but I'm going to give you several reasons. Okay. But this is the first one. Ancient Egyptians say that the pyramids are tombs. Okay. We actually have documents from ancient Egypt. The Egyptians wrote it down, right? They survived until today. The pyramids are tombs. And I'm not just talking about like Herodotus, the Greek who visited Egypt and the Egyptians told him that. But I'm talking about actual contemporary documents. For example, in the Harper's Song, this is a poem, the Harper's Song of Intef, it's called. It's probably from around the first intermediate period in Egypt. So that's the early to mid 2nd millennium BCE. There's a verse in there that mentions the gods. It's talking about the kings being the gods, okay? But the kings, the gods, who existed before, who are resting in their pyramids. And the blessed nobles, it says, likewise are entombed in their pyramids. So it's talking about the pyramids as tombs. Okay? The Abbott Papyrus of the 20th dynasty, this is from around 1100 BCE, documents robberies of the pyramids. Okay? Actually, it documents robberies of kings and queens' tombs, and the pyramids are mentioned in that list. Here are, among the tombs, pyramids that are being robbed. Yeah, so they're saying that they're pyramids. But we don't just have that. Let's go to the next slide. Funerary inscriptions are on the walls inside some of the pyramids. Okay, so pyramids, especially like of the 5th dynasty, for example. This is very early, 5th dynasty. Okay, this is right after the pyramids of Giza. You go inside the pyramid, and there's hieroglyphs all over the walls. All right, and what's in the hieroglyphs? Okay, a record of human history? No. Okay, what we find are the pyramid texts, as they are called. And what are the pyramid texts? They are funerary inscriptions, and they are there to guide the king on his journey into the afterworld as he goes up to the stars and so forth, to where he's going when he's dead. But anyway, it's related to the death of the king and the king's spirit going up back to the stars. And so that's written in the tomb. These are spells mainly for the king, but they have there are funerary text, and therefore it suggests that the people who made the pyramids, putting a funerary inscription inside of it, right, that the pyramid had a funerary function. Okay, so that's that. The Book of the Dead, you may have heard of that, which is based on the coffin texts, which is from earlier, is based on the pyramid text. This is all funeral document, funerary. Religious texts. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next one. Number 3. The pyramids are located within necropolises. As you may know, a necropolis is a city of the dead. It's a huge cemetery. So in other words, the pyramids are not isolated structures. They are in a context. Okay? Here's a pyramid, and what's all around the pyramid? It's slam bang in the middle of a cemetery. Okay? So it's just one element, the most important element, of a huge complex, which included a satellite pyramid, other small pyramids for queens, a mortuary temple, a valley temple, a causeway between them, offering shrines, mastaba tombs for other family members and for nobles. Some pyramids have solar ships buried next to them, which were thought to have been used by the king's spirit to take him to his final destination. Okay? King Menkaure of the 5th dynasty ordered a tomb to be built for his courtier, Debahen, and placed near Menkare's own pyramid at Giza, right? So in other words, I want your tomb, you're my officer here, I want your tomb next to my tomb, right? Giza was a place for the dead to be interred. A typical pyramid complex was surrounded by a wall, and around that wall, outside of it, was an even larger cemetery where all the commoners were buried. Okay? So the context of the pyramids suggests that they are tombs. But that's not all, okay? Give me another reason. Let's go to number 4. Mortuary temples were placed next to the pyramids. All right? Priests officiated at these temples. And what happened at these temples? Offerings were given to the dead king. Okay? The mortuary temples are right next to, and sometimes attached to, a pyramid. All right? Private tombs were also set up this way. Did you know that? There are smaller tombs that have mortuary temples next to them, like for nobles. Commoners didn't get their own mortuary temples. But here you have a way of worshiping the deceased right next to his tomb, right? That means it must be his tomb. All right. We have documents like the Abusir papyri, which come from the Old Kingdom, by the way, 5th dynasty, that named priests who work at the mortuary temples right next to the pyramids. Yeah. So that's the 4th reason. Let's go to reason number 5. Archaeology suggests pyramids evolved from mastabas. Okay, so what is a mastaba? A mastaba is a tomb. Okay? Pyramids didn't just pop up suddenly in history. The Egyptians started with mastabas, which everyone agrees are tombs. Okay? Even the lost ancient high technology people, I think, okay, believe they're tombs. Because we found burials in them, right? There's burials in the mastabas. Okay? Gradually, these tombs improved. And you can see on the little diagram there, you can see the evolution of the pyramid. You go from the mastaba to the step pyramid. The first one was the step pyramid of Djoser in the 3rd dynasty. And it was even expanded. It was made smaller as a small. Basically, a mastaba has a shelf, I guess you could say, built on top of it. It's underground, and then there's like this platform built on top of it. Okay? All the step pyramid did was built another shelf on top of that, and another shelf on top of that, and another shelf on top of that, smaller each time. It's special, okay? But you can understand how it went from one to the other, right? Then we get to the reign of Snefru in the 4th dynasty. He's experimenting further with pyramid designs, so much that he built 3 pyramids, and the first 2 didn't work out very well. They're not that well designed. The bent pyramid, maybe you've heard of it. But anyway, then we get to his red pyramid, which was finally a real smooth-sided pyramid. So you can see how he was looking at the step pyramid, and he's like, how can I make this even better? Can we do it with smooth sides? They tried twice and failed, and finally on the 3rd try got it right. Okay? But this suggests that the pyramids can trace their ancestry back to mastaba tombs. The mastabas evolved into pyramids. And if the mastabas are tombs, then the pyramids are tombs. Okay? All right. Reason number 6. Oh, there's some pictures here for you. Forgot about that. So what you're looking at here are some of these early pyramids. You can see on the left, upper left, that's the outside of a mastaba. The middle on the upper row is what's underneath a mastaba, the mastaba shelf. Okay, that's the tomb underneath, underground. On the upper right, that's the step pyramid of Djoser. Okay, and then on the bottom you have the 3 pyramids of Snefru. The first 2 that didn't come out as you wanted, and then the red pyramid, which did. All right. So we finally got the smooth-sided pyramid worked out. All right, now let's go to number 6. Sometimes you'll hear someone make the claim that no mummies have ever been found in a pyramid, and therefore we can't say for sure they were tombs. But that's not exactly true. A mummy was found in the pyramid of Merenre the First, lying next to the sarcophagus, not in it, because the tomb had been robbed. Okay. But not only that, although very few complete mummies have been found in the pyramids, parts of mummies have been found in the pyramids. A mummified foot was found in Djoser's pyramid, a right arm and some pieces of skull and other bones were found in the pyramid of Unas, an arm and a shoulder were found in Teti's pyramid, a skull, a pelvis, some legs, a part of a torso was found in a recently discovered pyramid of one of Teti's wives. fragments of a mummy was found in the pyramid of Pepi I, some mummy wrappings in the pyramid of Pepi II. I could go on and on. Anyway, so we've had mummy parts in the pyramid. Now, those who deny that the pyramids were meant to be tombs argue that this burial equipment or mummies are not original to the structures. They say, well, yeah, but that's because the Egyptians of later times stuck their mummies inside of them, but the buildings already existed. So you'll hear them make that claim. Okay, they say the mummies were added intrusively after the robbers had broken in. So they say, unless you can find the actual body of a verifiable king, right, then I'm not going to believe you. So, DNA analysis may be possible on some of the mummy remains found in the pyramid of Teti's wife that I just told you about. If her identity can be confirmed, that places her in the 6th dynasty, which is in the Old Kingdom, which is very early. We're going to have to see on this, okay? But if it's confirmed, and we believe it's true, then the Egyptians were already putting royal bodies in the pyramids in the 6th dynasty, and that's in the Old Kingdom when the Great Pyramid was built. So it's pretty darn close in time, and it would be strong evidence of this. But we'll see. We'll see. Oh, wait a minute. I skipped over one. Oh, okay. So, all right. Yeah. Okay, so I'm sorry. 6 is burial equipment, and 7 was the mummies. Sorry. So burial equipment, we've also found sarcophagi and coffins. And those are some pictures of some sarcophagi and coffins in the pyramids, right? And you might say, well, what do the ancient aliens people say about that? They say that the wooden coffins were put in there intrusively by the Egyptians, but not the stone ones, because they realize that they're, they like the stone coffins, but they don't call them sarcophagi. They say those aren't sarcophagi. Those boxes in there are something else. They'll just call them stone boxes. And when you say what were they for, they don't really have an answer, but some have said maybe they were batteries. Okay. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that. Yeah. All right, now you can go to 7. That's the one about the mummies, and I'm showing you some of the mummies and mummy parts that have been found in the pyramids. All right, let's go to number 8. I want to leave some time for questions, so I got like 2 minutes to get through this. Okay, so yes, some of the pyramids were robbed and had coffins then reinterred in them with the king's original names on them. So what that means is we know that the pyramids got robbed, okay? Oh no, the pyramid's been robbed, but we want to show honor to the dead king. How do we restore this, okay? You can't restore all the great treasures you once have and all that, but you can at least put a new coffin in there inscribed with the king's name, all right? That was a common practice to restore a king's tomb. But it suggests that the pyramid was being used for the same purpose, right? In other words, it got robbed, we're now restoring it. Now people will argue this is a new thing, not an old thing, but Egyptologists believe that this is because of an act of desecration. And in fact, in the documents of the Egyptians, it says that they did this because of desecration. So they are restoring the pyramid, and by putting the original king's name on the coffin, they're identifying the original owner of the pyramid. All right. And finally, you thought I'd never get there, number 9. All right. Private burials of the New Kingdom period had pyramids. All right. So these are small, and you can see an example of one on the left, okay, and some drawings of them. But these were not for kings, okay, because the kings of the New Kingdom were were buried in the Valley of the Kings. This is for nobles, private individuals who had the money. But you will see them put pyramids over their tombs, or have a chapel at their tomb in a pyramid shape, okay? This shows the association of pyramids with burials, that there was a tradition already of pyramids and burials by the time you get to the New Kingdom. The New Kingdom was when, of course, Ramses and all them ruled. All right, so it shows a long tradition, they believe, of funerals, tombs, and pyramids. All right, if you go on to the next slide, I just want to show this as well. This is the Diary of Merer. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it is about a guy named Merer. He was an official who lived during the reign of King Khufu of the 4th dynasty. And it says here that he was transporting stone blocks to build to Giza to build the Akhet Khufu, which is a reference to the Great Pyramid. And we know that the Akhet Khufu refers to the Great Pyramid because we're told in later Egyptian documents from like only 100 years later that refers to the Great Pyramid. So it's direct evidence of the stone blocks being brought to Giza to build Khufu's tomb. So, yeah. Anyway, it's true. We don't know precisely how the pyramids were built. There's some speculation as to that, but we do know the Egyptians built them, and we have Egyptian mathematical documents that show the math behind pyramid creation, so they had the knowledge. People have demonstrated, people today have demonstrated that it was within the realm of Egyptian technological know-how to build them. There's been experiments performed and so forth. We have this diary of Merer that I was just telling you about. Okay. So yeah, we can't prove exactly how the pyramids were built, but that's not evidence against the fact that the Egyptians built them, okay? We don't know how a lot of things in various cultures were made, okay? But we have the objects, okay? We know that they were made, all right? So this is a red herring that, oh, you can't say how they were made, therefore they didn't do it. That's not really an argument. Mm-hmm. In science, when the findings of disparate fields of science, of study, dovetail into a harmonious whole, that's a mutual affirmation of the validity of the hypothesis, right? So the fact that the Egyptians, all the 9 points I gave you, all of those combined, all right, are affirming each other to the validity of the hypothesis that the pyramids were tombs. It fits together. There must be something to it. Okay. It's easy to deceive ourselves into believing something simply because we can't find confirmation for our belief in the form of data that's consistent with that belief. Okay. I think the reason why people have adhered to these strange theories for the most part is because they think it would be really cool if it were true. Instead of believing things that just tickle our fancy, our best bet is to believe claims that are solidly backed up by the evidence. All right, you can go to the last slide for my plug of my my YouTube channel and my social media. But I'm going to open it up to questions. It's 3:13 or something. I have till 3:20, I believe.
Yes, we can go to 3:30 if you'd like to. So, well, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. It's kind of striking to me that the how folks will simultaneously say that the ancient Egyptians couldn't have built this sort of things, but then immediately are willing to appeal to antiquity for health claims. I think that's pretty striking. We just had a talk about that. So
that is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a few questions that we've had. Why were the pyramids symbolically designed to be conically shaped versus other, I think they mean pyramidal shaped, versus other forms one could use to design a tomb?
Well, there's some speculation here too. We don't have a solid answer on this. There are all kinds of theories. Some people say it's pointing to the heavens where they're supposed to go. It may just be just something as simple as just they thought it looked really great.
That's really cool, man.
There could be some symbolism to it, but there's no explanation of that in Egyptian documents, so we don't really know for sure. But I will say this: the idea of let's start with a step pyramid. Okay, why was that invented? It's just the easiest way to make a tall building.
I used to build those with Legos.
Right, because if you have it big on the bottom and small on the top, it's going to stay standing, right? If you have it big on the bottom and small on the top, that's not going to hold, right?
Over.
Even if you do it straight up, like Jenga or whatever, it's going to fall. So it's a great way to build something tall without it falling over. And it may just be that Snefru was looking at that step pyramid and like, how can we make this cooler? And he just thought of the smooth sides. It might just be something as simple as that. But I don't have a great answer for you on the symbolism of the pyramid.
Okay. So someone asks, do you know if any DNA testing has actually been completed, or is it in the process of being analyzed?
Of the one I was telling you about, of Teti's wife?
I assume so.
I heard when they first found it that they were going to perform some DNA tests on it, but I haven't heard anything since. So I don't know if they done it, or if they've given up on the idea, or what. Because it wouldn't really take that long, right? It would be a pretty fast test. So it sounds to me like they haven't done it. But I haven't heard anything since it was first suggested. So
Maybe
something we should put, if you know of anyone over the Egyptian antiquities, pressure them, because that would be really cool.
Get it done. Okay, so we have another question. All indications are that the Egyptians were excellent engineers. Given this, weren't the remains of the quarters of construction crews found near the Giza pyramids as well?
Yes. There's a whole, basically a town that was built for the workers right next to the Giza pyramid. And it has all kinds of workshops in it. And it was a place where they served food. I mean, it was, people lived there for a certain part of the year. I don't know if you know this, but the Egyptians, as part of their taxes, they paid with labor. So there was a labor tax, and you had to serve the government with your body, okay, certain times of the year. And so then if it was your time to come up, so slaves did not build the pyramids, commoners did. It's your turn. It's your turn. You got to come, and you move into that town. The old crew leaves, and for a few months, you are now working on the pyramids. So we actually have the workers' camps for the pyramids from the time. I mean, they're clearly datable to the time of the Fourth Dynasty. We have found objects, carbon dated them, and so forth. There's no doubt about it.
Okay. So now, if I have my timeline correct, the pyramids had already been around for thousands of years before the rise of Rome. So someone asked, when did some of the earliest pyramid conspiracy theories appear? They were already tourist attractions during ancient Rome.
Yeah, I mean, I was only going over the modern theories, well, actually, I guess I did go back to the year 500. But yeah, even before that, I mean, there were all kinds of, even in the days of Herodotus, when he was interviewing Egyptians about the pyramids, they were saying things to him, the Egyptians were, that weren't even true, that were legendary. So already by that time, all kinds of ideas were being bandied about that aren't even historical. So it doesn't take long, for yarns to be created, about these structures.
Oh, that was really wonderful. So, a couple more minutes for a shameless plug. Can you recap where people can find you and your YouTube channel?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel called World of Antiquity. And one of the things you'll find on it is I do a series called Myths of Ancient History, where I tackle a lot of these outlandish claims about not only the pyramids, but all kinds of other buildings, objects, and so forth, and show the holes in their arguments. So I have everything from did the Sumerians know about the solar system, to did civilization begin in India? So I've got all kinds of ancient history topics on where I basically debunk these ideas. And I also have travel videos where I visit ancient ruins. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, I have that too. So yeah, go check me out.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Now, before we go, though, I have one of our crew asked a question. I'd like that, so we're going to employ our prerogative and ask it. The crew member read something in the popular media a few years back where a material scientist claimed that the blocks were a form of concrete, not stones. And it seems that would have gotten more press if this were true. Are you familiar with it? And is there any good quality evidence for that?
I have read about that, and it has since been proven to be false. They're not concrete in any way, shape, or form. They were quarried, and we actually know where the quarry was, and we can see the same stone there in the quarry as at Giza. It's not hard to trace the origins of them. So yeah, they were cut out of the rocks. They were not concrete.
Well,
I can't give you an actual study off the top of my head about it, but that's what's been discovered. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. That was really a wonderful, wonderful talk. Thank you for joining us on the live streaming video for the Skeptrack with Dragoncon. These videos are available on Skeptrack.com. Thank you very much to Mark Ditzler and Calico Cove Studios. We appreciate your letting us use your space. Everybody stay safe, please, and we'll see you later. There's a 4 o'clock talk on the parapsychology password, where we'll have psychologists with internet parapsychology did some experiments that you're going to want to hear about. Thank you for joining us.
As fun as all this streaming content is, we sincerely cannot wait to see you all in person again next year. Remember to stay healthy and safe until then. Wear a mask when interacting with other people out in the real world. Want more Skeptrack? Get more than 10 years of Skeptics Track programming at our video archive. video.skeptrack.org